Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What's going on, Internet? Eric Benholtz here, back again with another e-commerce conversation. Hope all's going well on the other side of the Internet. On the other side of the Zoom screen from me is Henry and Brian from Chord Commerce. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
Great to be here.
Yeah, the pleasure's all mine. Like all my guests, only brilliant minds are allowed onto the show. And these are probably two of the most brilliant minds that I've run across in all my years of doing e-commerce. Henry and I met many years ago when he was at Glossier. Is that how you pronounce it?
So it's a great question. It's open to interpretation and everyone should pronounce it how they want. But the brand pronounce it Glossier.
Glossier.
Like dossier.
Okay. I don't know what dossier is. Is that a legal thing?
Yes. It's like a dossier of information, sort of like a whole collection of information.
Yeah. Okay.
Putting me on the spot there.
Yeah.
And no one's ever asked me what it actually means. I'm like, wow. Having just called me clever,
Yeah.
You're really getting after me here.
What's the legal dossier? Is it not where you collect all of the different files? You sort of like bring them with you?
So you guys kind of like did that for beauty products.
That's exactly right.
So Henry was the COO at Glossier. And we met at I guess some kind of investor city group put on an event, and we kind of shared things going on. Are there twins, right? You got a couple of twins.
I do. I have 3 kids, 2 of which are twins. I think that event was when, right after they'd been born. And then it was the first time I'd sort of been out of anywhere. It was a week or 2 after they'd been born. And so, the chance to meet cool people and have a couple of glasses of wine was very exciting and ultimately very formative, a relationship. And I remember we went out after the event to some dive bar. That was all very, very important for me at that moment in time in particular.
Sounds not too dissimilar from the first time I met Henry, which was 7 or 8 years ago. My daughter had just been born. And in fact, I think my family was still in the hospital and Henry and Emily had come up to Montreal to kick things off. And I took a break from being a new dad to meet with them. And while we didn't escape to a dive bar, I'm pretty sure drinks were consumed.
Now, Brian, you worked at Glossier as well?
Yeah, exactly. So I was the chief technology officer over there.
Okay. So one thing about Glossier is you guys did not build off of Shopify or WooCommerce or any of the platforms out there. You guys built that from the ground up, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, there's an awful lot of talk these days about headless commerce and building headless commerce stack. So that's exactly what Glossier was way back in 2014. It was all of the acronyms, really. It was API first. It was what's called an SPA or single page application when we launched in 2014. And it was a little bit ahead of its time. So we ended up retreating from the single page application early on, but never losing sight of building in an API first and headless way. And I think 6 or 7 or 8 years on, the core functionality that we had implemented is still in place. And that commerce stack has evolved as the business has evolved over time.
Now, one thing about Glossier is their immense content into the gloss. Was that part of the platform, or was your blogging content built on WordPress? Or
yes, so it's worth pointing out that Into the Gloss predated Glossier by, I believe, 3 or 4 years, and it was very much the content platform. It was the platform that gave Emily the insight that she needed and the confidence to go and create Glossier. That there was an opportunity, there was a brand that was missing in the world. I think in her words, a brand that you wanted to be friends with, a brand that actually spoke with its customers instead of speaking at their customers. But it was built on WordPress. It was something that was stood up quickly and had scaled quite well, but we were starting to feel some pain with it. So in fact, the move or the inspiration to build Glossier.com in a headless way has its roots in Into the Gloss. So one of the first pieces of business that I undertook was replatforming that, building it in a more modern way so that we could continue to ship really amazing content to our customers and our readers, but do some research around sort of emerging commerce trends and really sort of consolidate our content effort. How do we have a single source of truth for all of the content that lives within the organization? So we ended up rebuilding Into the Gloss in an API first or headless way, not headless commerce, mind you, but headless content management. And then the lessons that we learned along the way there, we were able to rinse and repeat for Glossier.com.
So what I really love about your story and kind of being able to stay in touch with Henry over the years was just hearing the news that he was leaving Glossier. And my first inclination was, Henry, come work at Beard Brand and let's blow this up and do all the things that you did there. And he's like, nah, man. Not cool enough for me.
Nothing personal.
I think Henry gets that a lot. Come work here. Come reinvent this. Come reinvent that.
I would imagine with kind of like your background and your financial expertise that it's a pretty high demand. So what was interesting, though, is your vision wasn't to go create Chord. Why don't you talk about what you were trying to do when you left Glossier?
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of those days. It was a really exciting time for me and for Brian and for the company we were trying to start, because we really believed that we saw what was going to happen in the future, and that founding spirit is so strong. So bringing it back to getting asked to come do cool projects, starting a company is a vocation, as you well know. You're like, no, I got to do this thing. And what we believed at the time was a continuation of something that I'd always believed that had led me to Glossier, that had driven a lot of the journey there and the strategy there, that e-commerce and the surrounding internet was fundamentally going to reshape communication and power structures between brands and people. And we've done quite a lot, I believe, at Glossier to push that agenda forward, really involving customers in ways that hadn't happened before, because we could engage them at scale in ways that were just technically impossible before. Social media, obviously, big driver of all of this. And what social media had started to really demonstrably do was create so much more intersectional identity, number one, and unearth a whole bunch of groups that were just being underserved or frankly ignored. And what we saw back in 2018 was there are going to be way more D2C brands. The technical barriers to entry have come down because of Shopify in large part. And the ability to identify groups of people that wanted to be served better, more astutely, more deliberately, had grown and was going to continue to grow exponentially. So in our mind, the era of the billion-dollar brand is over. What's about to happen is many, many, many more brands are going to be created that will be smaller, because they are going to serve what had up till then been called niche audiences. So if you think about the purchase decision of, I don't know, a moisturizer, in 10 years ago even, let alone 20, 30, 40 years ago, the decision tree was, are you a man or a woman? How old are you and how much money do you want to spend? And now, obviously, everything is so much broader than that, and we understand nuance within each of those questions. And then we've bolted on a whole bunch of other questions, like how do you feel about the planet? And are you a vegan? Or how do you feel about animal cruelty? These kinds of questions are all added on. So each brand needs to really represent its group, and it has the ability to do that, but they're going to be smaller. So we wanted to create Arthur, the company we started in early 2019, as a platform that would allow us to get the benefits of scale and all of the things, for example, the technology you just spoke about at Glossier, that would help us be best in class, but create brands that could be the right size for the communities they were trying to serve. So we did that. 2019 was our build year. 2020 was a launch year, which is obviously a very interesting year to launch anything. We in fact launched our first brand, Hickey, which was an all-gender sweat brand, really trying to destigmatize sweat and really trying to move the conversation around sweat products from what it still kind of is on the left side of the aisle, everything sort of dark blue, dark gray, dark red, and it's called Mountain Zenith, and that's for men, because men don't actually get to smell like real things. They have to smell like Mountain Zenith. And on the right, it's all sort of pastel pink, pastel blue, pastel purple, and everything's called Powder Fresh. And the bottles are slightly taller and thinner and curved, because that's for women, obviously. And now I guess you've got like the white end cap, which is all the sort of natural deodorants, which is an innovation. But we felt like this isn't how people think anymore. Let's create a sort of very relevant all-gender sweat brand, which has products for the realities of sweating rather than 72 hours of freshness, because I don't think today in America many people need 72 hours. So that was the first round, and we launched that the week that California and New York both went into lockdown. We launched later that year a brand called State of Menopause, beauty products, and broader products in a sort of lifestyle brand focused on the myriad and often conflicting needs of women going through perimenopause and menopause. Again, not a small group, but a group that had not been spoken to directly, we felt at the time. What we learned in 2020 is, yes, the thesis is 100% right. But because everything that's happening in 2020 is going to happen, the end game is going to happen way, way, way quicker. So we're sitting there saying, well, we've built this platform to support these brands, but now we see an opportunity to support so many more brands than we thought were ever going to exist. That's a much bigger opportunity for us. So we have focused our efforts on the underlying platform we build, and particularly the technology, which we believe can serve brands doing exactly what we were trying to do, which we believe there are going to be many, many, many more of over the coming months, years, and decades even. And we're going to make that available to everybody. And that opportunity to really deliver on our thesis is very exciting. And frankly, the market opportunity is very exciting and really big.
So I love to hear that as a e-commerce platform or solution, that your roots are deeply ingrained into e-commerce and just understanding the pitfalls, the wins, the losses, rather than coming in from like a technical standpoint and be like, oh yeah, we're going to rechange e-commerce without actually knowing what it's like to serve customers. One quick question, I'm kind of curious, are you going to maintain those brands, or as part of your transition into Chord, are you guys going to, find new leadership for those opportunities and reallocate your focus to Chord?
We are focused on Chord. The brands will live on. We're very proud of those brands. We think they deserve to exist, and we think they're going to be very successful. We've announced that State of Menopause has a life as an independent company. It's being run by Stacey London, who is absolutely incredible, an amazing entrepreneur and spokesperson and influencer, and she's going to be a phenomenal leader there. Hickey, we have some very exciting plans that we look forward to telling you more about, or some such press line. That means we're not ready to tell you, but we do have something lined up that's really cool.
And Hickey is Hiki, right?
Yes,
exactly.
Also falls into the glossier. You can say it. We talk
Hiki.
about it as Hickey. Hiki it happens a lot. Hiki happens too.
I got to imagine that 4-letter domain, hiki.com, wasn't inexpensive.
Fun story, actually. We leased it.
Yeah, cool business too.
Yeah, there's a business called venture.com, and they own a huge amount, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of domain. And they've come up with this system whereby you can lease domains from that.
Wait, what was that called?
Venture.com.
Venture.com.
You must imagine it's pretty valuable.
And that they have a program that I think is particularly well suited for startups, where the price you would pay for a domain that would otherwise be worth $20, $30, $50, maybe $100,000 in a straight up transaction, they let you sort of test into it. So year one, you're going to pay an awful lot less while you're trying to find that product market fit, or just seeing if the company that you're trying to start is going to have legs. And once you prove that you have those legs and you're going to have revenue, well, then your lease goes up correspondingly. So it's the first time we'd come across something like that. And we ended up not only getting Hickey, but another domain through them. And it was definitely an interesting approach.
But you have no opportunity to buy the domain?
No.
Okay.
Not as part of the contracts. I'm sure you could try and negotiate.
Yeah.
We do own Hickey.co. And I feel like all cool startups have a .co.
I would just be afraid that they would just jack the price up, a whole bunch once you've proven success on the domain,
If I remember correctly, it's like you have it's at least a 4-year commitment, and it might extend beyond that. But yeah, it's certainly a consideration, but oftentimes like you don't have any recourse. If you want the .com, then, previously you would try to engage with the domain holder who wouldn't re-engage. So you're sort of stuck, and now along comes venture. So it has its trade-offs, of course, but they were worthwhile for us.
I want to transition now into Chord. So first of all, thanks for sharing venture. I think that's a super cool thing I've never even heard of. So headless is a buzzword that's been around. I've had on the show another headless alternative on the marketplace, Shogun for you guys. But explain to our listeners what the heck headless is and why should anyone even give a damn?
Yeah, that's great. I think I'll take this one if that's okay with you, Henry.
Absolutely.
So you're absolutely right. Like headless is a pretty buzzy term. I, for one, am really enthusiastic to see so much interest in the approach. If we are to come up with a common definition for it, it's the separation of concerns. You have a presentation layer for direct-to-consumer commerce. It's for all intents and purposes, it's your website. That's what your customer is experiencing. So you decouple that from the tools that you use to actually manage the content that is going to be served on that channel, and then the orders that that channel is going to facilitate. In a perfect world, you're managing your products and you're managing your orders in separate systems, purpose-built point solutions that are exactly right for that job. And it gives you the freedom to be able to tell those stories or deliver the presentational layer in the right format for your customers. The traditional approach, the monolithic approach, you found everything under one roof. So the tools you use to manage your content were deployed on the same servers, were managed within the same code base as your front end templates. So you were oftentimes constrained by that approach. You would be slowed down. And the assumption going in is that you're only going to publish content in one place. And as we've seen with today's digitally native brands, they're increasingly focused on being omnichannel. And so having your content in one place that allows you to take advantages of these opportunities is why we're seeing this renewed interest in what I call API first, but is referred to as headless.
What kind of shop is going to be able to best take advantage of this technology?
Excellent question. I mean, a couple of years ago, it was a shop that had its own technology resources. There's no getting around it. To get the best out of headless meant that you needed to roll up your sleeves and write some code. Like, I don't think you can WYSIWYG your way into a successful headless commerce build. It also meant that you needed to choose the right pieces of infrastructure. I say API first. So you have to choose those APIs. You have to understand how you get them to communicate together. And then you have to create that headless experience for your customers. And that meant writing a whole bunch of code. We spoke an awful lot about Glossier at the outset of this. And the technology team there was a significant part of the overall company's headcount. You know, for all intents and purposes, we were a technology company. And that's just the state of where the tools were back in 2014 and 2015. Fast forward to today, 2020, 2021, there's better infrastructure alternatives. There's better point solutions. The APIs are significantly easier to interface with than they were before. That doesn't mean you can't have a relationship with technology, but you don't need to have as big a team. So to answer your question, what sort of shop would get the most out of this? It's a shop that wants to have a relationship with technology. They either have one or two in-house resources, or they've partnered with a technology-focused agency that is going to provide that expertise to them. And they've made a couple of big bets on key pieces of infrastructure. Some infrastructure pieces like their cart platform, their order management system, their headless content management system. They're giving that responsibility, that really important responsibility, away to a platform. And they're saying, we're going to own how these pieces come together and how they create the customer experiences we need to truly stand out.
I might add to that and spin the answer a slightly different way. Our mission is to make the economics of direct-to-consumer make sense. So right now, what we look at when we see the environment is very limited barriers to entry to getting a serviceable commerce experience online. And that's great. And I think Shopify should be massively applauded. I mean, they don't really need it. They've been rewarded financially significantly for what they've done, and rightly so. The challenge is to create something differentiated. And differentiated is in large part about the customer experience, but also in large part about the understanding of the customer. So the data infrastructure that underpins all of that, and your ability to glean insights, and the ability to respond quickly. So put your content where your customer is, create amazing marketing campaigns, so on and so forth. That has got incredibly competitive. It's very, very hard to differentiate. So you've had many conversations on this podcast. We have had conversations on the phone and Zoom about how difficult the economics of direct consumer are. That is in large part because you've got a ton of brands. And as we said, we think there are going to be a ton more, exponentially more, coming and essentially duking it out, armed with exactly the same weaponry and with all the same constraints and all the same opportunities. And I joke, and I've said this countless times, Brian's probably going to roll his eyes if I could see him. My degree is in history. I look at the First World War as an analogy. You've got two sides with pretty much exactly the same capabilities, same amount of people, same weapons. And what happens? Stalemate. No one really wins. Everybody dies. And that's currently what's happening. But the Western Front is actually Facebook and Google ad marketplaces. So headless gives people the opportunity to truly differentiate their business in ways that very much suit that business. rather than having to shoehorn the business into whatever e-commerce is telling them it needs to be, and allows them to better understand and better serve the audiences that they are trying to serve, which come back to that story from earlier about why we began all of this in the first place, and think that's where things are headed. But to do all of that, not be constrained by technology, to be empowered by technology, to do it all without the investment that the sort of first generation of direct-consumer companies, the Glossier, Warby's, Harry's, Aways, and so on and so forth, had to put into technology to be able to do that. Now it's much more available. It's not no code, and winning on the internet isn't going to be no code really for a long time for most people, but it is low investment relative to what's come before it. And it allows founders like yourself to focus on what you do: brand, community, product, and technology is there to support your vision, not sort of give you a whole bunch of limitations about how you bring that vision into the world. And that shows up in significantly better lifetime values, significantly lower CACs, and most pertinently for Headless and progressive web app, significantly higher conversion rate.
So I kind of want to segue into that point about higher conversion rates. And you guys did a demo for me a number of months ago. And what I thought was really interesting is just the immense amount of insights you can gather from a platform solution like Chord, specifically like knowing the entire customer journey and how they walk through your store and your site, and how you might be able to, essentially create a customized experience for people depending on their behaviors. Can you talk a little bit more about the strategies or implementations of unique solutions that you're not going to get from an out-of-the-box solution like Shopify that you are going to get from Chord?
Yeah, I think both of us should answer this question because we'll come at it from different angles. It's important to remember I'm a business operator and Brian is the technical operator. And obviously we both understand each other's worlds. He arguably understands mine a lot better than I understand his. But I think you'll get two perspectives here. So I'd start with just back to the previous question in Headless. I think the fundamental step forward that a lot of Headless vendors are selling and is really important is progressive web app technology that just allows everything to be so much quicker. And page load speeds are the kind of fast that 3 or 4 years ago you'd say, oh, we've got to slow that down because the customer won't believe that. They want to see a bit of load time. I think that really does just change the game in and of itself. Not just because better experiences lead to more conversion, which we know is true, but also because it allows you now to serve so much more content. If you can click through much quicker, you can serve much more content. Customers consume that and just have a much richer experience. So I think that's like the first thing that's true across Headless. That is one of the great unlocks of this new technology that will just boost experiences generally. Where we see it slightly differently to other products on the market is this insight. So we like to call ourselves the first headless platform with a brain. And so built into our offering is a customer data platform, which means that we are tracking all of your event data and all of your transaction data in a very buttoned up way. We're making sure we know exactly what everything is, the data governance, the label, everything about it is spot on. We have our own proprietary data model that allows you to get insights essentially out of the box. And like you said, insights at the event level. So I can really understand how people are clicking, how a customer coming from a certain channel behaves versus a customer coming from a different channel, how a customer that buys a certain product first behaves versus a customer that buys a different product first. These are all insights that people have in more sophisticated shops been able to get, but it's required a lot of investment in infrastructure, a lot of investment in statistical capability, and we're trying to make that available to everybody. So back to what we were saying before, yes, you need to want to lean into the technical side of what the internet can offer, lean into data as a concept, and lean into insights, more importantly, as a concept. But what you need to get that is so much lighter, and the return that you'll get from the dollars you can see in lifetime value increases, as I said, CAC savings and conversion increases will more than eclipse even that. So net, the economics of your business just start significantly improving.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to necessarily answer this in a different way. I think I can certainly build on it from a technical perspective. And Eric, I just want to say that I love that what stuck out to you in that demo was the insights piece, because it is the piece that we are the most proud of. Like, while Headless is very buzzy right now, I think, and Headless is a great start. It is just that. It is a start. And I want to take us back to another insightful piece that you said at the outset of this, like, we're operators. You appreciated the fact that we're not just people coming along with a technology solution, but we have been on the front lines of e-commerce for longer than I care to admit. And we felt all the pain that you can feel. And I oftentimes like to sort of believe in this approach to development that is driven by pain. So pain-driven development. And the reason we're seeing so much interest in Headless right now is that people are feeling pain. They have chosen a lot of different apps that are off the shelf. They've provided quick wins, but very quickly, they have slowed down their front end performance. They have removed the flexibility that is required to ship customer experiences that allow them to stand out. So they're looking to root out that pain. And Headless does provide a really great launching up point for a progressive web application, customer experiences that are significantly more performant. Once they get that right, the next pain that they're going to feel is their customer data, first party data. There's a reckoning coming with the way that we collect our customers' data, and brands that aren't on top of that are ultimately going to be left behind. And so things like data governance, things like GDPR, consent management, CCPA become the next most important problems for these commerce operators to solve. So what we're saying is, Headless is a great place to start. You're eventually going to need the brain. Why not tackle them both at the same time in a way that will make the economics of your business just absolutely make sense?
One thing I would like to chime in is Henry was talking about this. Go to highkey.com, go to stateofmenopause.com, go to the navigation, click on the different categories. And he talked about speed, and speed's a big thing for us, a beard brand, a big priority. And you alluded to the problems that have from the added plugins and just the bloat that comes with shoestringing everything together on your platform. And what you notice is something very odd. You click on a page and it will essentially load before like the drop down menu goes back up, which is unreal kind of fast. Like there is no longer a delay in the load or a very slight appearance of delay.
Well, there are no servers. We fully leaned into a world where these experiences are statically generated and they are progressively enhanced, and they are delivered to customers from an edge compute network that is the closest to them. Like, you cannot get faster than this, and that will have an automatic impact on your conversion rate, especially, and I'm sure you're seeing this across your own site, the amount of mobile transactions just are quickly eclipsing the traffic that we used to see on desktop.
It's almost like that native app experience on your phone through a domain.
Yeah, exactly. And this whole movement towards progressive web app, another acronym that we'll introduce into the lexicon, PWA, it really was introduced to bridge the gap between a browser experience and what you can achieve natively. And so it's really, let's ship the simplest possible thing, and then as the sort of the connection catches up, you're progressively enhancing it. So you're guaranteeing a better mobile experience, but that doesn't require a native build. So it's really leaning into accessibility for the customer. And it's a great movement. It takes some consideration to get right. But again, like, the tooling is catching up so quickly, and it's a great time to be building. It's a great time to be making some of these decisions about your technology stack. Speed, at the end of the day, it's hard to argue that there's a more important metric than just making your site blazingly fast. And sometimes that means saying no to certain plugins, saying no to certain bloat, but just like really getting to the metal of what your application should be delivering.
Sorry, I was about to say, we cannot let the conversation about browser-based stores and native app stores pass without, well, I can't anyway, without talking about the fact that Brian and I have argued about this. On both, we've been on either side, for years as operators. So much of our insight into why and how we think API first and headless can help commerce come from deep experience and in many cases deep pain. And we've had these debates hundreds of times, literally hundreds of times. And that's what underpins so much of what we do is we're operators first, who make solutions ultimately for ourselves and realize that actually they could be generalizable and help so many more brands. And as we were having that conversation, I was taking myself back to multiple of the ones that Brian and I have had. And as I said, we've switched sides on the debate. We've been every which way on it. And so that's just a really neat way to sum up why we built what we built and how we built what we built.
I just had a quick, idiot type of question. PWA, isn't that somehow associated with Google technology? Is it like an independent?
Yeah, no. So Google has really sort of put their weight behind it. Of course, they had a framework to facilitate it as well. And it's in their best interest, I think, to continue to move folks in this direction. And they're motivating brands to think about this by saying that they're going to start counting page speed as one of the measures for your page rank. So the more you sort of lean into organic search results and SEO, understanding that Google is now going to count that against you is significant motivation for brands to invest in their page speed. I think it's somewhat of a shame that it took that over a sort of a desire to just deliver a better customer experience, but it's coming from all fronts. But yeah, so Google is a big part of the PWA movement. I think it's their AMP framework.
Well, I'd argue that I think Google getting behind this and the desire to deliver a better customer experience are both united in being not Amazon. I think that's a really important factor here. Again, the same way I feel about Shopify, Amazon has done something remarkable, has created obviously an incredible, previously unheard of amount of value in doing so, will continue to do so. But I believe that the more that Amazon does what it does, which is make everything about convenience, speed, and price, the more an experience-based alternative will rise alongside it, because both are important. If you make everything a thing, then that doesn't leave a lot of joy in purchase. Convenience is great, but it's not joyful for the most part. And so the opportunity to create the other side of that, and I believe e-commerce in general is a rising tide, so both sides can and probably will win, is very important. Google obviously dominates the other side of that, and they've been losing significant product search share to Amazon. So them getting behind this, yes, it's self-serving for them, but it's not at odds with, and I don't think should really diminish the fundamental desire, which is let's create a commerce experience that's about feeling and that's about experience, frankly, not just convenience.
You mentioned Google's measuring or ranking people based on page speed. What kind of resources do you guys recommend in terms of making sure your website is loading fast? Is it, page speed insights, or are there other third-party resources that you would kind of like Pingdom or anything like that you would recommend operators look at in terms of how their website's performing?
I think page speed insights is a great one. Google has that tool they call Lighthouse as well that they ship that gives you really good insights right out of the box. And there's some low-hanging fruit that you can ultimately tackle. There's no getting around the sort of the seat of the pants analysis either. When the page is fast. And I think what's important is that you're testing it out across a variety of devices and different connection speeds. But yeah, you don't need a massive tool to get started. I think you want a more sophisticated tool when you're looking for those final percentages, when you're just trying to eke out a tiny bit more performance and you need a little bit more insight. But when you're talking about taking your page speed from 8 seconds before a customer can interact with it down to sub-second, there's a lot of work to be done. And some of the free tools that are available are a great place to start.
Sweet, man. Where can guys and girls listening to this show learn more about you guys?
So they can find us on our website at chord.co.
And that's CHORD, correct?
Correct.
Cool. Chord.co. I appreciate you guys coming on and sharing the future of e-commerce. It's exciting times to know that things are not slowing down and opportunities are getting there, and experiences hopefully will be improving for consumers and shoppers as well.
And economics improving for businesses.
Yeah. The fattening of that bottom line is something that we all are excited about, or I would hope. Thanks, guys, for being on the show. I hope our listeners have learned something new. I certainly have, as always. Leasing domains was probably, one of my surprising big takes that I was not planning to come out of this. So thanks for being on the show. As always, this has been another e-commerce Conversations. Cheers. Keep on growing.